Hi everyone, it's Patricia Warby, Alchemy Therapies here, and another in my ongoing series of conversations with other practitioners who work in similar fields to the one I do. And we're going to talk today with my friend Shelagh Cumming, who describes herself as a nurse specialist in energy medicine. And she did confide in me before we started recording that most people wouldn't understand what that was. So we're going to ask her, in fact. What is energy medicine, Shelagh?
Yeah, well, my main background is nursing. I was 30 years in nursing, but I've always had this drawn towards the Eastern philosophy of medicine, which is the belief that the body is made up of energy, and science has proven that. There's lots of evidence to support that. And this energy system, which is not taught in Western medicine or in my nursing either, we're taught the nervous system, cardiovascular systems, digestive, but the energy system is not recognized at all, but it is the main system that controls all other systems. So the energy medicine is addressing I suppose malfunctions in the energy functions. So for your body to function fully physically, mentally and emotionally at its optimum, you need your energy system to be moving rhythmically and smoothly. And through life experiences creates interruptions and some blockages within that energy to prevent it flowing the way it naturally is built to do. And some of that is just even modern living, just exposed to so much chemicals in our daily living, but also the emotional side of stress at work or family. Just modern life really disrupts our energy patterns and flow, which then leads to physical, emotional, mental challenges along the way. So the energy medicine is designed to find where the energy is disrupted, and then I've got an array of techniques that help to release that energy flow so that it stimulates self-healing, so that body can work at its optimum, and that person can be their optimum self.
I like the way you're putting that, the idea of being optimum. Yes. Because we often, in Western medicine, we look at health or illness as a sort of discontinuous polarity. All right, you're either healthy if you've got no overt illness, or you're not if you've got something that has symptoms. And I think I like the idea of an optimum health, which suggests more of a gradation, doesn't it? A sense of moving towards healthiness rather than just dismissing symptoms, which are, after all, the body's way of drawing attention to something underlying.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you deal, give me a typical client for you. So who do you work with?
I really enjoy working with, I suppose because it's my own experience of having work stress and anxiety, which was a really challenging relationship in my nursing role. So I really have a passion in helping other people. It tend to be midlife and people in midlife professionals that are just really struggling with the changes in life. But I'm not talking menopausal changes, I'm just talking life changes in life stresses that come at that time. I could easily have blamed the menopause for much for what I was experiencing, but ultimately it was a toxic relationship I was in, and that had to be addressed. But all the symptoms that could have been related to, maybe the menopause didn't help matters, just maybe I was more resilient prior to that, to these kind of relationships.
Yeah,
Who knows? We're never going to know.
I think it's an interface, isn't it? It's like a constant dialogue between your life and your body and your experience and your emotions, how you express yourself. So, you know, I work with stress. I particularly work with traumatic stress, which is previous experience that hasn't been metabolized, which I find a massive factor in why people experience stress in their daily life. And I don't know if you agree, but
absolutely. Yeah, and quite often when people come, you say, what's the typical person? Somebody will come feeling very anxious with something normally. People don't tend to admit they're stressed, but usually stress is the underroot. but through time, what uncovers it tends to be a reaction to something that's happening in their everyday, but it's reflecting an experience in previous life, not previous lives as in other lives. I mean, in
The previous
early life,
experience.
previous experience. That's exactly.
Mm.
So, and the current situations just seem to trigger, like pressing big red hot buttons in them, and it throws them. They're unaware. They're unconsciously aware of it being related to that. They just know they're struggling with whatever is in their environment that's making them feel stressed in some way or anxious.
Yeah,
But often it reflects back. Mm-hmm.
They're often unconscious, I believe, because it's stored in an unconscious way. I mean,
Yes.
Physiologically, it's stored unconsciously. The part of the brain where previous experience that's overwhelming is stored is largely an unconscious one. It's the brain stem, it's the limbic brain. And so if you think of it as a sort of upside down triangle, you've got the cortex at the top and then narrowing down to the base. It's largely the unconscious experience. So people often don't know what's triggered them other than the current environment.
Yes, exactly. They just know they're not happy in that current situation and want to make changes.
Yeah.
As a kinesiologist, what I find is absolutely fascinating, because an awful lot of folk aren't aware how we work, because we can access that subconscious energy field that guides you to what is needed for that individual. Because people can present with the same symptoms, but it's a completely different healing journey for that person. It's a completely different root cause of why they're feeling the way they are at this current time. So it's getting down to that root cause and that individual's, because we're all different, our life experiences are so unique. So we use a muscle response technique which connects me with that internal knowledge that's within that client, and it guides me to where the energy is blocked. I don't necessarily need to know what the events were, but sometimes it's just a word that triggers, but we can retune so the body stops reacting in that stress way, and it retunes and rebalances itself so that it just switches off that big red button that's lying. It's, as you say, it's been unprocessed over time. Or or metabolized, I think was the word you used. It hasn't been metabolized properly.
Yeah, I think of it as kind of processing, going through something so that it becomes dealt with, kind of digested. So many experiences when we're very young are indigestible, if you like. Because we're overwhelmed, we're lacking support or understanding while we're going through that, and sometimes the traumas are just not even recognized. You know, as I've said many times, they're not always overt, they're not the obvious things. Sometimes they can be just not getting your needs met in crucial ways, being the odd one out in your family, or humiliated in routine ways. You know, can be enough to create these physiological changes in your body, which are related, as you say, to the shift in the energy. And I'm imagining some people listening here might be like I was maybe 10, 15 years ago, saying, oh, energy, that energy thing that you go on about, as a sort of weird concept. But actually it's a very physical phenomenon, isn't it? You can actually sense the energy in a person, and you can work with it. I know I've had kinesiology, and it was absolutely fascinating how my body's responses changed according to the emotion I was feeling or the sensation I was processing at that time. So what do you notice in people? Are there like patterns of energy that you kind of pick up on?
To be honest, Patricia, some people are highly sensitive. Some people see colours in the aura. I don't. It's a technique that you learn. It's a scientific formula that you apply, and anybody can apply it. It's just learning the skill of how to listen through the muscle response. So I don't have any special powers to tune in to this energeticness.
Brilliant.
And some people think they say, are you psychic because you're so spot on, but they don't realise actually their body has communicated that to me. I haven't, there's no guesswork. It's just been very accurate in your muscle response monitoring. And so I don't have any special skills of being able to, when I'm working with a client, I tend to yawn and my eyes water, and that's my body sensing there's been a shift. Sometimes the client on the bed, they'll notice their tummy rumbling, and that's when I hear that going on, the tummy rumbling, I know there's a sense and a shift. And I always say the more watery my eyes are, the more it's going on in them as well. So there's nothing mysterious about it. There's nothing. It's very, very scientific based. And because we can't see energy, but what they do feel is, like, even when you balance the energy to start with before you work, they just melt into the couch. Their thoughts, these racing, rapid thoughts, just seem to melt away and just become more focused. And I say melt into the couch and just be in the moment, be very much present in the moment when you're working with them. But yeah, sometimes they'll personally, if they're new to energy, they may feel nothing. They think there's absolutely nothing going on. They think they're lying in a couch thinking a word, or there's maybe a magnet somewhere, or a crystal, or an oil. They think nothing's going on. Then they'll sit up afterwards and they feel this sort of wooziness, perhaps. Or they just go out the door and there's just a big weight lifted off their shoulders. They feel that kind of change, and or they'll respond differently to a situation. They just suddenly, maybe someone who would really wind them up previously, water off a duck's back. No matter what that person said, doesn't upset them. They don't react in the way they used to. Then they know something's happened. But yeah, once the clients are more familiar with working with energy, I just obviously just trust that. I know when it's working. I can tell when something's processed. We do checks to make sure it's the right thing for them. But it's fascinating. Completely fascinates me.
I find it really incredible that the body can be read in that way, you know. And some of the science is fascinating as well, about how the muscle goes weak when you're out of connection or out of alignment with the truth of something, you know, or the best path towards something. I mean, that was something that was demonstrated to me when I had kinesiology treatment, and I couldn't explain it at the time, but of course now I do understand the science of that, really. And it's all to do with the autonomic nervous system, and how that kind of interplays with your emotional readout, because your emotions are so key to being alive as a human being. They are they're not just feelings, actually. We want to be really clear about this, that the science has shown us that emotions actually change your physiological responses, because that's controlled by the same part of your brain, the survival brain, right at the base of your brain, the brainstem and your limbic system, which are beneath your cortex. And these are the parts of your brain that actually interact with your life. And so your emotions don't just make you have a bad day, do they? They actually will depress your heart rate, or ruin your digestion, create autoimmunity, all sorts of diseases, long-term chronic diseases, if unaddressed. So I think it's so vital.
And I think most people, the one they tend to connect with is when they feel nervous. They feel nervous, maybe going for an interview. Everybody's felt those butterflies in their tummy. And we know the gut is our second brain. They talk about the emotions are very much in our gut. But I think we've all felt that. Or, do you know the other one, when you feel it? I was watching a film and it really, really gripped me. The pain I felt in my neck and my throat. I thought, oh my God, I'd forgotten that physical pain you get in your neck and throat when you're really feeling that really strong emotion.
It's almost like you're tensing up around your neck, because your neck is full of, like, it's either tears that want to come that can't quite come, or some sort of expression from your mouth, you know, a cry or a scream or something. And of course, the nerves that supply your head and neck are all linked to your vagus nerve, and your vagus nerve is really, really part of the autonomic nervous system. So it's real, it's physical, it's scientific. Why don't we know about this stuff in Western medicine?
That's a very good question. Very good question. Well, that's not, they do know about it, because I've worked with GPs for 25 years. I work with GPs. They know. Right. It's just they're not in a position, just with the way the structure is, it doesn't allow them to go there with that. And it's quite sad because very many of them are frustrated with that, with their time limitation with clients and the facilities they have to refer them on to. It really is, it's as frustrating for them as it is for us. But yeah, why the bigger picture? Don't kind of acknowledge it more. Don't know.
Well, I think it's a political decision of resources, obviously. And actually, some of these techniques were very widely used and known about a sort of 100 years ago. Electrophysical medicine was used, applying electrodes to the body, homeopathy, biophysical medicine, but it got systematically, degraded, I guess. There was a decision made that the only form of medicine was going to be pharmaceutical medicine and surgery. And that was kind of the people that were making the most money from that was, the early sort of petrochemical industries and pharmaceuticals and all of that wanted to maximize their profit, of course. And so they influenced the politicians to kind of cut out anything in medical training that did not pertain to those two arms. So here we are 100 years later, still bearing the legacy of that.
And then there's a very valid place for these things as well. I mean, heart surgery is just absolutely amazing, and hip replacements. But I think it's more for acute things. Like if you've taken a brain hemorrhage or a heart thing, they are worth their weight in gold. But see these long-term things that are chronic, there is no real acute, like immediate answer for them, and they're very much, as you say, emotionally based and past experience based. It doesn't matter how much drugs you throw at these people or how much you cut out their body, there's still going to be a problem
because they've got an energetic pattern that hasn't been shifted.
So the problem will reoccur again.
And we're
like
seeing
for hypertension, for example. But again, by working in the GP practice, you see through years of they'll try a medication, it'll work for a wee while, the body overrides it, they have to go on a second medication, after a few years a third medication. Now they'll probably put that down to maybe increasing weight or age related, but you do wonder how much is it that you actually haven't addressed the root problem of why it's there in the first place. I always think your body gives you, as you said earlier, it gives you a painted signal something's not right. It will give you signs that something's not right. If your blood pressure is elevated, why? Why is it like that? What's happening in the body that's out of alignment? We have to address that to really get through it for true healing, rather than suppress symptoms. The body's stronger. It will override anything.
Very good point. So we can, unless we address the root cause, all we're doing is tinkering with the symptoms.
We just suppress these. So the body will give you a symptom to highlight to you there's something all right in me, help me. And we'll suppress that symptom. So it tries harder. And it'll either bring that symptom back again, or it'll bring it out in another symptom. It'll go around the corner and think, well, you haven't listened to me there. Let's now give you this so that you listen to me. Well, that's my thinking. And
it's mine too. And it's been my observation with people that they end up on escalating drugs and more serious conditions as they continue to avoid the central problem, which is usually their life in some way. And it might not be, as I said, it might not be like in your own case, being in a toxic relationship, which is an obvious one to kind of focus on. It could be something that happened to them 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago even, that didn't really get dealt with, and then it gets triggered in the current life by something that has a reminder for the body, because the body has memory, and this is a very important point. The body stores memory cellularly through its links with the autonomic nervous system, and also with the microbiome, with the bugs that live in and on you also have sort of communication mechanisms. that communicates to your cells. And there's even molecules like peptides which communicate the emotional state of that person. And if you are full of rage, I mean, I find this a lot, rage about something that didn't happen for you that needed to happen, or rage against a parent who never understood you, or whatever, those patterns don't just disappear with time. They actually stay lodged in the body in a cellular way. And often heart disease, for instance, I find very often is linked to unprocessed rage. It can also be linked to sorrow. You know, sorrow can be held in the heart. You know, we say I'm heartbroken. It's the patterns I see tend to reoccur, although of course everyone is individual, and I'm very glad you said that, because we look at the individual with the problem, not the problem the individual has.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And that's a really good way to start, because you meet people where they are in their life, and you kind of work backwards. But the patterns are very interesting, and I think as a kinesiologist you must see certain recurring sort of things. What about your midlife people? You know, the kinds of stresses they're under must be similar in people.
Yes, I tend to find the common just whether they're not able to cope the way they used to, and it's quite often people in my like high positions. They've done really well in their career. They're not weak people. They're actually very, very strong people. People that have find their own solutions to things, and always have been there as the support person for other people. And then it comes to something happens and down they go, and it's a bit of a shock to them, because they've been the one to pick others up. And so some people think it's a weakness coming to get help, but actually it takes a lot of bravery and to actually come through the doors and seek that help when you are that individual that's normally the one that's doing the helping. And so yes, very often they're in high positions, they've worked up a career, but they hold things a wee back, hurt from being disappointed, an early, very young relationship ending. But that's when you just going back to the point about you focus on sort of deeper traumas like childhood traumas or early life traumas. My interpretation of early life traumas, not recently, obviously I've learned a lot more recently, I seem to think that was people that had experienced really severe violence, like child abuse, violence. But actually it's, and I never, unless you've come from a poor social group from that, I didn't expect it was actually, it's the everyday things that happen to everybody. It's not just that group of individuals that are perhaps a lower percentage, maybe not so low as we thought perhaps. But I mean, like for instance, my daughter was born prematurely. She was 3 weeks, she was taken away from my arms within minutes of being born, spent 3 weeks in special care. That was trauma. That's played an impact in later life. But these things that we take, and obviously at the time you think, well, like in a cesarean section, for instance, as well, like born, these are traumas to children. But they're way before their memory, and they don't know what happened to them way back. One of the first corrections that tends to come up with kinesiology with early on clients are fears that were set up before birth and experienced during birth for the first 2 months of life. And it's emotion related with that developmental stage. They don't understand what's happening, but often they experience the mother's emotion. Or it could be pain and delivery, a traumatic delivery, but they hold on to that emotion and they create a fear from that emotion. And that fear affects them at a cellular level throughout their life and affects how they respond to everyday life. I'll give you an example of one wee boy I was working with. He was having trouble at school. And we did some work on him, and there was 2 fears came up. And it was his problem at that time. He was having problems at school and being happy at school, but he wouldn't travel in the car, so he just got really, he had to be left with grandparents. If they even went a couple of miles down the road, he couldn't travel in the car. But one of the fears was movement, a fear of sudden movement. Now, I've got a midwifery background as well. I know what happens during a caesarean section, and I know why, but that child is removed rapidly from the womb. Once it's open, the child just pops out. Well, it's kind of lifted out very rapidly. It doesn't have that natural process going through the birth, which squeezes and takes that bit longer. So there was sudden movement very early on that created that fear of sudden movement, and the current experience of him, he couldn't travel in the car without being sick. That's just an example of how these fears that are set up in early life can affect you in today's life. Now that wee boy's doing really well. Now he can now go to soft play. That's the kind of difference it makes in people's life. He can do the normal things that other kids can do. He's now maybe at secondary school now. I'm going back a bit now. But yeah, that's just an example of how an emotion or an experience so early on as that can affect you as you go through life, and how it can affect you.
Yeah, yeah. We know so little about the perinatal environment, but what we do know now is that, as you said, the fetus can record information, you know, because they have a developing brain. They have a nervous system. It might be immature, but it's there. And as you say, picking up the fear, of course, because they're connected to mum at that stage. So if she's having difficulties during carrying the child for whatever reason, that's going to be picked up. As you say, cesarean is a very sudden transition as opposed to vaginal birth. So there are all sorts of reasons why people can have these experiences which sensitize them in later life to the experiences of loss, of losing the
detachment, this detachment as well.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Detachment. Yeah, because these wounds are recorded. They're kind of attachment wounds, and so anything that happens in later life that reminds the body of those early experiences, whether in a sensory sense, you know, something moving quickly as you highlighted, or for instance, losing a loved one, when you perhaps lost a loved one, you know, your early experience, like if you didn't connect with your mother in the first few weeks of your life, because as you explained, you know, something can happen where you're taken away. So many things can happen, and it's such an extraordinary fact that this is recorded and at a cellular level, and that's, I guess, what you and I both work on in different ways.
So and the important thing is like, if it's there, that there is actually something can be done about it. That
Absolutely.
There are techniques that help the body to process it, so that you can let these fears go very quickly as well. Often it's and permanent changes as well. It's like it can be gone in 10 minutes, in fact, even less, a few minutes, and that body's changed permanently, and then it affects how you respond differently to your environment.
That's marvelous. I mean, it's just so incredible. Are there things people can do, you know, outside of a session to help this response? Is there anything that you would recommend that people do to kind of calm themselves?
Well, I think the breath is really, really important. But yes, I mean, I strongly follow what I advise my clients as well. But quite often when there's these experiences, people are quite sensitive individuals. And so just to be aware of what you're exposing yourself to. And that, when I say that, is like, what you're listening to, what you're watching on the TV, what is it? Fear driven? Is it positive? Is it violence? So I try to avoid watching the news, avoiding violence and aggressive behaviour on TV, because even though you know it's made up, your body doesn't know that. Also be careful what you're saying about other people, I think, as well. Sometimes we can get into a trap of critical of other people, and when we say, oh, there should be, and particularly just now when there's so many rules and regulations, and if somebody breaks it and somebody can, oh, they are not doing the rules, and you can become this critic. But whatever you're saying about somebody else, your body actually doesn't know you're speaking about somebody else, and you're speaking, according to your body, you're speaking to yourself. So I think you've got to be very aware of your own tongue and thoughts. It doesn't even have to come out your mind, your thoughts. And sometimes the people where even a person that's not a critical person, because somebody will listen just now, oh, I don't do that. Yeah, you do. You do it to your family. You do it to your loved ones because you're trying to protect them. Oh, don't do that. We all do it, and most oftenly we do it to the ones we love the most because we're trying to protect them. If we worry, if they're, particularly your children, if you're worrying they're doing something that is going to come to harm or not a good pattern, you critical. So I say to be aware of your critical thinking and switch it, and be aware of what your ears are exposed to. The breath, connecting with nature. I think that's so grounding for your energy, to connect with nature. And use your breath through meditation, yoga, and exercise. I've got kitten at the door shouting to get in here. You'll have to wait.
We're going to finish up shortly, so
sorry.
We'll be able to rescue. So
I didn't manage to get the door open there, but I hadn't.
Oh, how do people
the door's still shut.
How do they connect with you if they want to?
They can contact me. Well, I've got a Facebook page, Shelagh Cumming Enhanced Wellbeing. I have a website, which is www.enhanced-wellbeing with 2 L's in wellbeing.co.uk. I have a YouTube channel with just under my name, but the spelling of my name is Shelagh, Cumming. Or you can call me or email me. So the details, my phone number and email are in my website.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well,
I have a Facebook group as well.
Do you?
Interest.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, maybe you can interview me at some point. We'll do another one.
Yeah, that would be great.
Really good.
Yes, thank you.
In the meantime, thank you so much for discussing with me. We could have shared a lot more, but we want to keep it nice and compact for people. So brilliant.
Excellent,
I love that.
Lovely, Patricia.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you, Patricia. Take care.
See you soon. Take care,
See you
everybody.
later.
Subscribe.
Bye.